The silence was a lie, a suffocating deception layered over the raw, overwhelming terror of the Amazon. It was a green hell, thick with shadows, heat, and the constant, unnerving threat of unseen movement. Here, a U.S. Delta squad was pinned down, surrounded, and running on borrowed time. Sergeant Maria Santos pressed her back hard against a moss-covered tree trunk. She was reaching for the radio. Her breath was ragged, every inhale a short, painful, desperate gasp. "Mayday, Mayday, this is Delta Squad, requesting immediate extraction." The words were barely a whisper, swallowed instantly by the dense, oppressive canopy. Maria knew the truth already. Extraction was not just difficult, it was a dream, an impossibility. Their mission was already dead. It had died violently at dawn. 5 team members were gone, lost to the morning ambush. Only 3 remained alive, and one of them, Private Chen, was severely wounded, bleeding out slowly in the crushing, unrelenting humidity. They were trapped, surrounded by a ruthless cartel force, an enemy who knew this jungle as intimately as their own hands. They knew every trail, every hiding place. They had dogs. They had their scent. Maria whispered a final, weary prayer into the static. It was not a plea for rescue. She did not ask for a helicopter or massive air support. She asked simply for a miracle. Then the jungle answered the prayer. It did not answer with a deafening, terrifying roar. It answered with a quiet, efficient, lethal crack. Just hours earlier, the world had still felt normal. The mission had been routine, simple on paper, a standard search and rescue. A medical research team had vanished. They were last reported near a contested border, an area allegedly controlled by small, disorganized local miners. The intelligence briefing Maria had memorized was dry, concise, and fatally wrong. The miners were only a front. They were a cover for one of the most brutal drug cartels operating anywhere in the region. The moment the trap sprung at dawn, the world inverted. It became chaos. Deafening gunfire, the metallic smell of blood mixing instantly with the heavy jungle perfume. Maria's squad was decimated in minutes. Now they survived by hiding. They pressed their bodies against the damp, cold, mossy roots of ancient trees. Every passing second was stolen time. Chen, the wounded soldier, was fading fast. Her skin was pale, dangerously clammy. The corporal, Rodriguez, watched her with a look of defeated finality. They had perhaps 30 minutes, maybe less, before the enemy sweep found them. They couldn't move safely. They couldn't stay where they were. It was a perfect, inescapable nightmare. That's when the impossible broke the silence. Chen, delirious and weak with pain, whispered the information. She had heard a voice. A call for help, she insisted. But it wasn't the panic of a soldier's cry. It wasn't in English. It wasn't even in the common Spanish dialect of the region. It was an ancient, rhythmic language. A tongue that predated the cartels, the borders, and the mission itself. It was a sign that the jungle held secrets deeper and older than they understood. Maria had nothing left to trust but instinct. In 8 years of service, raw instinct had saved her more times than any tactical training. They moved. They crept silently towards the unknown, impossible voice. It was their last, desperate gamble. The ground ahead opened slightly. They reached a small, makeshift clearing. Maria instantly saw the problem. The cartel had established a forward operating position. A dozen men were armed, confident, shouting roughly in Spanish. But then the shouts broke abruptly. They turned instantly to confusion, then to panic. Maria could see the disorganization. Something was terribly wrong with their formation. Then the call came again. The elder's voice cut through the thick humidity. It was the same sound Chen had heard. A woman, an indigenous elder, was speaking directly to the trees. She was guiding someone. Crack. The sound was muted, sharp, precise, and instantly effective. A cartel soldier at the perimeter dropped his rifle and crumpled. He didn't move. Crack. Another figure fell. Just as fast. The weapon was suppressed, the sound swallowed effortlessly by the massive, encompassing jungle. Someone was hunting the hunters, and this invisible force was impossibly accurate. Maria and Rodriguez watched in stunned, horrified silence as the impossible unfolded before them. The elder, Abuela Elena, stood near a group of captured research scientists. She wasn't fleeing, she was coordinating. She spoke and the bullets flew. Every syllable was a precise coordinate, every breath a deadly instruction. In less than 10 minutes, the fighting was over. The organized force was gone. 12 heavily armed cartel members lay still on the jungle floor. They were taken out methodically, clinically, by an unseen marksman. The precision was beyond supernatural. The miracle had a name: Marcus Webb. He emerged slowly from the shadows of a massive ceiba tree. Tall, lean, his face weathered, his rifle was a custom-built weapon, a tool of absolute, terrifying purpose. He was a professional contractor, a former soldier, a man whose eyes held the cold, hard recognition of necessary violence. Now he was their completely unlikely, impossibly timed savior. The sense of relief was instantly replaced by cold dread. The victory was short-lived. More cartel soldiers were closing in fast from the south. Elena's scouts had confirmed the numbers. At least 20 men and tracking dogs. Maria's small, exhausted group was trapped between two overwhelming forces. Marcus had a plan, but it wasn't simple. Abuela Elena knew the route. An ancient, sacred path used by her people for centuries, a partially flooded cave system. It was the only way to vanish completely, to disappear from the face of the earth. But the passage was treacherous. It was a maze of narrow, winding tunnels. It included sections that required complete submersion in freezing water. This threatened Chen's life instantly. Her fever, her infection, her compromised lungs, she would never make the swim. They had to split the group. Rodriguez had to take Chen on a longer, drier, far riskier alternative route. Marcus and Maria chose the absolute hardest path. They would hold the entrance to the main cave system. They would position themselves as a temporary, desperate shield. Their singular goal: to buy the civilians and the wounded time. Time to find the distant extraction point. As the first distant, sweeping enemy flashlight beams appeared down the long, water-filled tunnel, Maria raised her own weapon. Marcus checked his rifle one last time. The moment was upon them. The jungle spirits, they felt, were choosing sides in this subterranean battle. Maria looked at Marcus, her face resolute. "We might not make it out." Marcus simply smiled, a professional, grim gesture. "The question," he replied, "is whether you die for something that matters." The first shouts of the advancing cartel force echoed, distorted and amplified by the stone walls. The battle for the sacred caves had begun. The gunfire in the caves was a terrible, deafening symphony of survival. Each shot slammed against the ancient stone walls, shaking the very earth. Maria anchored herself behind a natural formation, trading fire with the advancing enemy. Marcus was cold, utterly methodical, dropping targets with the clinical efficiency of a machine. But then the terror began on the enemy side, more screaming. The shouts were panicked, not from being hit by a bullet. The sounds came from the absolute rear of the cartel advance. Panic, the sound of men being attacked by things they could not see. Shadowy figures materialized and vanished instantly in the resulting chaos. Elena's people, mobilized and organized by Marcus, were striking back. They were using the sacred ground, the tunnels they knew intimately, to fight their silent spiritual war. The organized advance crumbled instantly. It turned into a panicked, headlong flight. Cartel soldiers dropped their weapons, desperate to escape the shadows and the ancestors that seemed to be hunting them down. Maria and Marcus watched as the chaos disappeared entirely. In minutes, the enemy was gone, fleeing the cave system entirely. Maria and Marcus were alive. Elena returned, guiding them to a secret, dry passage hidden behind a grinding section of stone. They emerged finally into the pre-dawn mist. The sound of distant rotors cut through the quiet. The helicopter was coming. Maria and the rescue team moved quickly toward the clearing. Elena stopped Maria just before the extraction point. The elderly woman's eyes were steady, knowing. She spoke earnestly. Her voice carried the entire weight of the ancient forest. The jungle chose you to be its voice. Your survival was not luck. It was a message that must be carried back. Maria knew then the truth was vast and complex. The official report would be simple. Mission successful, assisted by local allies. The ultimate truth would be kept secret. Marcus Webb, the Avenger Snip+r, simply vanished back into the morning mist with Elena. He was exactly where he needed to be. They remained in the jungle, using their unique combination of ancestral knowledge and military precision to train the next generation of defenders. The cartels eventually withdrew from the region entirely. They were convinced the jungle itself was fighting back. Maria carried the message. 6 months later, sitting in a sterile congressional hearing room, she told the official story. But she knew the real one. She knew that what they experienced hadn't been an isolated event. It was the absolute beginning. A profound transformation. A strategic shift in the balance of power. The jungle had finally found its voice. It was learning to fight back. Marcus Webb had been their savior, yes, but far more importantly, he was the symbol of the ultimate protection. The man who had their six. The force that allowed ancient traditions to survive modern violence. This story is just the beginning. The seeds are still growing. The whispers will continue. You just have to know how to listen for them.